Right, it's 10 o'clock. Sally, can we start recording and live streaming, please? And then let the chair know once we're ready. Thank you.
No problem. Okay, we're ready to start the meeting.
Diolch yn fawr, Sally. Croeso chi gyd. Welcome to you all today. I Pwyllgor Craffu a Trosolwg Cyllid ac Adnoddau a phawb yn bresennol o bell. Gan ein bod ni'n ffrydio'r cyfarfod cyhoeddus yn fyw, bydd yn rhaid i ni gynnal 2 gyfarfod Zoom heddiw ar wahân, un ar gyfer eitemau cyhoeddus ac un ar gyfer yr eitem eithriedig. Unwaith y bydd aelodau'n cytuno i fynd i un ar gyfer yr eitem eithriedig. Unwaith fydd yr aelodau'n cytuno i fynd i Pwyllgor, bydd yn rhaid i bawb adael y cyfarfod ac yna ail ymuno ar cyfarfod eithriedig. Gallwch ddod o hyd i'r dolenni yn eich gwahoddiad dyddiadur. Bydd pob meicroffon yn cael ei ddiffodd oni bai eich bod yn dangos eich bod yn dymuno siarad. Yn dilyn hynny, byddaf yn galw eich enw a bydd yn rhaid i chi droi eich meicroffon ymlaen. Hoffwn atgoffa'r aelodau i ddewis eich iaith gan fod cyfarpar cyfieithu ar gael. Ac os ydych yn dymuno i siarad eich bod yn defnyddio'r swyddogaeth codi llaw glas, gallwch hefyd defnyddio'r cyfleuster sgwrsio. Iawn, ymlaen at y rhaglen. Ymddiheuriadau am absenoldeb.
I haven't received any apologies, but Councillor Andrew Wood will be a little late joining the meeting.
Iawn, diolch yn fawr, Sally. Os na rhywun arall efo ymddiheuriadau ar ran rhywun? Nag oes? Iawn. Reit, yn ail, eitem 2, datgan cysylltiad. Jeff Corey.
Hello.
Jeff Corey.
Yeah, item 8, 1 and 8, 2, pages 44 and 69, the formal work programme and the combined work programme is in relation to the disposal of tier prints. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Will you be leaving the meeting, Jeff?
I don't think he needs to leave.
No, okay.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine.
As long as I declared it.
Okay, diolch yn fawr iawn.
Thank you.
Right, materion brys.
Not aware of any,
Chair.
Iawn, lovely. Right, eitem 4, y cofnodion. A cyn ni mynd ymlaen efo'r cofnodion, gai jyst egluro, efo'r cofnodion yma, fyddai'n gofyn am cynigydd ac eilydd, a fe rhaid i'r cynigydd a'r eilydd fod yn aelod o'r pwyllgor yma. Oce? Iawn. Reit, cymeradwyo cofnodion y cyfarfod y gynhalwyd ar y 5 o Hydref. Os gynnau gynigydd ysgolwch chi'n dda. Is there a proposer? Nigel Smith, diolch yn fawr, and Brian Cossi also raised his hand, so I take him as a seconder. Diolch yn fawr i'r ddau na chi. Ydy pawb yn hapus? Everybody happy with that? Show of hands, please. Diolch yn fawr.
Ivor Lloyd has his hand raised, Chair. I don't know if he was just proposing.
Yes, Ivor. Sgyn ti rhywbeth eisiau ddeud, Ivor?
No, just yn eilio fan ni.
OK, iawn, diolch fawr chi. Right, moving on. Eitem 5, cofnodion y cyfarfod anffurfiol cadeiryddion ac is-gadeiryddion y pwyllgorau Trosolwg a Craffu. Cofnodion y cyfarfod a gynhalwyd ar y 4 a 15 o mis Hydref. Reit, di pawb yn hapus efo'r rhain? Just codwch eich llaw os ydych chi. Everybody happy? Lovely, diolch yn fawr. Reit, eitem 6, cofnodion y pwyllgor archwilio a llywodraethu. Cofnodion y cyfarfod y gynhalwyd ar yr 10 ar 20 o Fedi. Reit, pawb yn hapus efo hwn? Everybody happy with this? Show of hands, please. Yeah, okay then. Item 7, cwestiynau i'r aelodau cabinet.
I'm not aware of any, Chair.
Iawn, diolch yn fawr, Sally. Iawn, eitem 8. Adolygu rhaglenni gwaith i'r dyfodol, a mae Dawn yn mynd I gymryd yr eitem yma. Dawn, over to you.
Okay, you'll find the finance and resources and the combined forward plan on pages 33 to 78 of your agenda. Can I just advise you of a couple of changes? So following approval of the business planning framework, I've updated the forward plan accordingly with the caveat that these dates are provisional and due to the uncertainties, we may need to organise special meetings. Can I also advise you that the growth deal will be coming to the next Finance and Resources meeting on the 16th of November with final approval due by Council on the 10th of December. That's all I have, Chair. Thank you.
You're on mute, Austin.
Thank you, Brian. Yes, does anybody want to make a comment? I've got nobody, no blue hands, and I can't see anybody in front of me waving a hand. So we shall take that to a vote. I take it everybody's happy with what Dawn has just said. Can I have a show of hands? Yes. Iawn, lovely, diolch yn fawr. Right, eitem 9. Ceisio barn ar y grŵp tasg a gorffen treth twristiaeth. Dwi'n ymddiheurio fan hyn, ond oherwydd nad yw Jane Richardson a chadeirydd y grŵp tasg a gorffen y cynghorydd Thomas Jones yn gallu mynychu'r cyfarfod yma ar gyfer yr eitem hon, dwi wedi cytuno bod yr eitem yn cael ei gohirio. So this item will be deferred, okay? Iawn.
Peter Lewis has raised his hand, Chair.
Peter Lewis, sir. Unmute yourself, Peter.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I withdraw my hand now. It's being deferred.
All right, okay, lovely. You're too quick off the gun, Peter. Right, eitem 10. Cynrychiolaeth Trosolwg a Craffu ar fwrdd y grant plant a chymunedau a bwrdd grant cymorth tai. Iawn, dwi wedi cael sawl enwebiad a dyma nhw fel a ganlyn. Bwrdd y grant plant a chymunedau, yr enwebiadau ydy y cynghorydd Liz Roberts, y cynghorwraig Pat Hebron, cynghorydd Frank Bradfield a'r cynghorwraig Joan Vaughan. Yna i'r bwrdd grant cymorth tai, y cynghorydd Brian Cossi, y cynghorydd Aaron Wyn a'r cynghorwraig Liz Roberts. Right, dwi wedi cytuno gellir cynnal pleidlas ar gyfer y penodiadau. Mae'n bosibl y bydd angen I ni gynnal 2 bleidlas ar gyfer bob penodiad os na fydd unrhyw un yn cael mwy na 50% o'r pleidleisiau. Yna byddwn yn tynnu'r aelod a'r nifer lleiaf o bleidleisiau a phleidleisio eto. A gai atgoffa bawb, dim ond aelodau y Pwyllgor Craffu yma sydd yn cael pleidleisio. Okay? Sorry? Anne McCaffrey.
Thanks, Chair. I presume we're looking for proposals now, Chair? And if that's the case,
yes.
Is it? Yeah.
Yes.
So can I propose Frank Bradfield for the Children's Board?
Iawn. Is there a second of Frank Bradfield? Andrew Hinchcliffe, are you seconding? Yes, Andrew Hinchcliffe, right. Any other proposals, please?
Chair, can I nominate Councillor Pat Hebron?
Thank you, Chris. Is there a seconder? Any seconder for Pat Hebron? Is that Nigel Smith? Are you seconding?
No, no, I'm not. I'd like to propose Councillor Joan.
The chairman's on mute.
You're on mute.
Is seconder for Councillor Jones, sorry.
Gai eilio, please.
Cynghorydd Ifar Lloyd, diolch yn fawr. Reit, mae gennau cynghorydd Wyn Jones, mae o wedi codi law, cynghorydd Wyn.
Bwrdd Cadeirydd, dwi'n cael cynnig Cynghorydd Liz Roberts ar gyfer yr bwrdd plant ag ti isio
Na, just y bwrdd plant i ddechrau.
Cynghorydd Liz Roberts?
Iawn, diolch yn fawr. Os a eilydd i Cynghorydd Liz Roberts?
Mi'n eiliad cynnig yna, Austin.
Diolch yn fawr, Cynghorydd Aaron Wyn. Right, is there a series? And you can just switch your mic on and just say so. No, right, okay then. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dawn. That makes it, we have a proposer and seconder for Councillor Frank Bradfield, a proposer and seconder for Councillor Liz Roberts, a proposer and seconder for Councillor Joan Vaughan.
Yes, Chair, that's correct. So now what we'll do, we'll launch a poll for that one and then we'll go to the housing one second, okay?
Thank you.
Okay, just bear with us.
Whilst we're waiting for Dawn, oh, she's back now.
Sorry, Chair, we're just loading the poll. So like the Chair said, if only those on the committee votes and everybody else just ignore it. I think it's come up on your screen now.
Don't forget to press the submit, members.
Thank you for reminding us, Nigel.
Okay, I think that's everybody voted. That's 17 votes. And as Councillor Joan Vaughan has got more than 50% of the votes, she will be appointed to the Children and Communities Grant Board.
Iawn, diolch yn fawr. Congratulations, Joan.
Thank you, members.
Right, ymlaen â ni rwan bwrdd grant cymorth tai. The people who've put their names forward are Councillor Brian Cossey, Councillor Aaron Wynne and Councillor Liz Roberts. Have I got nominations, please? Right, Nigel Smith.
I'd like to propose Councillor Brian Cossey.
Thank you, Nigel. Jeff Corey, are you seconding that?
Yes, I am.
Okay, thank you. Cynghorydd Wyn Jones.
Cynghorydd Aaron Wyn, with that.
Cynghorydd Aaron Wyn, diolch yn fawr. Os a eilydd i Cynghorydd Aaron Wyn?
I'll second Aaron.
Thank you, Chris. Right, Anne McCaffrey.
I'd like to propose Councillor Liz Roberts.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for Councillor Liz Roberts? Can I see a hand up? No. I will second Councillor Liz Roberts. Okay, so we've got three. And they are Councillor Brian Cossey, Councillor Aaron Wynne and Councillor Liz Roberts.
Okay, Chair, we will now launch the vote. Again, can I just remind members, only members who are members of the committee to vote, please? Thank you. Okay, it looks like all members have voted. There's 17 votes. And as Councillor Brian Cossey got 65% of the votes, he can be appointed to the Housing Support Grant Board.
Diolch yn fawr, Dawn. Thank you and congratulations, Brian.
Thank you very much. Thank you, members.
Iawn, ymlaen â ni. Eitem 11A. Diweddariad Brexit. A mae Barbara Birchall yn cyflwyno'r eitem yma. Barbara.
Diolch yn fawr, Cadeirydd. Bore da. Good morning all. I'd like to run through a presentation with you, so if you can give me a moment please, and I will attempt to share my screen with you. I'm not very good at multitasking, so you'll have to bear with me if possible. I don't know whether you're able to see that.
Yes, we are.
You are. Thank you, Councillor Cosley. Okay, so just to introduce, I'm sure you all know me anyway, but just to let you know that I'm Principal European Officer, but I'm also the Brexit Lead Officer for Conwy. And I'd like to thank you for asking me here today. I hope I can give you a little bit of information about Brexit, how we're dealing with the potential consequences, excuse me, and how it may affect our residents and businesses. The presentation will provide current information. However, the final outcomes on many issues will not be known for quite some time to come. So I'll start by outlining the latest position. So the UK officially left the European Union on the 31st of January this year, and in order to continue to negotiate the terms of the withdrawal agreement, there was a transition period until 31st of December, which means the UK is still following EU rules and trade stays the same. However, there will be new rules from the 1st of January, regardless of whether final agreement is reached or what type of deal that may be. Although there was a previous deadline of negotiations needing to be complete by the 15th of October, this has now been extended until mid-November. And the mid-November deadline is to give time for the withdrawal agreement to be ratified by all 27 EU member states and the European Parliament before the 31st of December. This slide looks simple, but it's actually probably the one with the most information behind it. The trade deal options that we're hearing about are being negotiated, and they are a Canada-style deal, excuse me, which means a free trade between the UK and the EU, although the EU's agreement with Canada is called the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, or CETA for short. And CETA gets rid of most, but not all tariffs on goods, and it does not remove border checks. And just to remind everyone that 45% of all UK exports are to the EU, and 53% of all imports are from the EU. So this deal is quite an important one for us. The EU does not have a free trade deal with Australia. So trading on a similar basis to Australia would largely be the same as trading under World Trade Organization rules, or WTO. And this is another way of saying the UK would leave with no trade deal in place. And the WTO is the place where countries negotiate the rules of international trade. There are 164 members, and every member has a list of tariffs or taxes on imports of goods, and quotas, which are the limits on the number of goods that they can apply to other countries with which they don't have a deal. If there's no trade deal at all, the UK would have to trade with the EU on WTO rules, at least initially. And in this scenario, the EU would impose its tariffs on imported UK goods. And the average tariff is pretty low, actually. It's 28% for non-agricultural products. But in some sectors, the tariffs can be quite high, with some of them rising to more than 35% for dairy products, for instance. And this will have a big impact on UK businesses selling their goods to the EU. The UK, though, would do the same and impose its tariffs on imported EU goods. And it has already released details of the tariffs it will charge from January to countries with which we don't have a deal. In some areas, these have been imposed to protect UK producers on most agricultural products, for example, to avoid additional disruption for UK farmers and consumers. This will lead to higher prices in the UK for some EU goods, and it will have to treat the rest of the world in the same way. So it can't have good benefits for EU members, for instance. It would have to be the same for everyone. This isn't just a trade deal. There are other areas to be negotiated, like product standards, safety regulations, and sanitary checks on food and animals. Some of them will apply with or without a deal, but businesses that trade with Europe fear that no deal in particular could lead to lengthy delays, and eventually negotiations on some kind of deal will still have to begin again. There are other services where cross-border trade exists, and these are professional and business services, financial services, tourism and travel, transportation, road, sea, air and rail, telecoms and IT, etc. And although these aren't restricted by tariffs and border checks, there are national regulations on licensing, quotas, professional qualifications and immigration to be decided. Even though there's still so much uncertainty around the final position by the end of the year, there's still a need to plan so that we can act on the changes that will happen. And this slide shows the planning assumptions that have been made by UK government. So as mentioned, tariffs and other trading costs will likely force up prices for consumers on everything from agricultural produce to car parts. The government has now started a campaign for businesses to prepare for the end of the transition period, called the Time is Running Out campaign. And you may well have seen this on the TV. There's been quite a few adverts lately. HMRC are writing to 200,000 VAT registered businesses who trade with the EU to set out the new customs and tax rules and how to deal with them. And the government has published a border operating model to give traders the clarity they need to prepare for the new rules. The new border controls will be introduced in 3 stages up until 1st of July next year. And the government has published a reasonable worst case scenario, which outlines the government's planning assumptions, and we're currently reviewing that. So that's the boring bit over with, really, sorry, but that's all the detailed information that you need to be aware of. So how these changes will impact at a Wales level will include obviously the ports. Holyhead, Fishguard and Pembroke are our main ports, but it also includes Mostyn docks within this region and will require large border checkpoints. Holyhead is the largest and the busiest in Wales, as you're all aware, and in order to do these checks, the ports don't have the space to undertake this, so they're likely to build a structure somewhere inland. I'm assuming it's going to be on Anglesey, but I know that they are looking at Gwynedd as well. There will be checks on imports of products. This should happen from January, but it will be phased in the controls in 3 stages, and border control will then be fully operational by July. Imports will only have a few checks from January, and the phasing mainly starts in April, where importers will have to pre-notify via a computer system before, before they reach the port. Exports will undergo the same phasing, but the EU will have full checks from day one at customs. And in order to export animals to the EU, the UK will need to be listed as a third country, and export health certificates will be required for all animal products, not just live animals, but all animal products. The Fisheries Trade or Environmental Bill, the Welsh Government have fallback options just in case the Environment Bill is not granted, or the Agriculture Bill, is not granted royal assent in time. So they will have a standalone bill on direct payment for farmers, which I think is crucial for our area here. And the Welsh Government will publish an overview of its end of transition plan sometime this month. So we're waiting for that to happen to see if there's any further action that is required. On this slide now, we see the potential impacts at Conwy level. As previously outlined, it's anticipated there will be some impact on jobs, businesses and communities to a greater or lesser degree. Critical supplies could be delayed at border controls, including medicines and foodstuffs. Businesses will require additional support to provide information and guidance on new regulations. Food poverty, which has been increasing due to COVID, is likely to increase, with changes to household employment status and income levels, especially at the end of the furlough period, although, as we all know, that's now been extended for a further month. But increased food costs due to tariffs will exacerbate the situation for families, and this could be a potential burden in future on our social care services. A disruption in food supplies may affect the supply chain for our school meals. Regulatory services may be involved in dealing with inquiries regarding the export health certificates that suppliers will need. And EU citizens working in care homes across Conwy who've not yet applied for EU settled status may be ineligible to stay and work in Wales after June. So our response to all these sort of issues that are arising is that we've established a project team in Conwy, the makeup of which is outlined in point 3.1 of your report, and it's chaired by the Chief Executive, and we liaise with portfolio holder for economic development, Councillor Nghonwy. We do hold regular officer meetings to discuss the latest information and then amend our risk registers accordingly. Information is forwarded to the appropriate officers as it is received or gleaned, and Conwy's web pages are constantly updated to provide information for residents, businesses around workplace rights, and also to help voluntary organisations. So in terms of our risk registers, we have identified corporate risks to businesses and risks also to residents. And the corporate risks include EU-sourced resources. As a council, we import goods in two areas of significant value from the EU, which is IT and our recycling vehicles. There's unlikely to be tariffs for IT equipment, so that can continue as normal, but some vehicle tariffs are subject to tariffs which could be up to 10%. And our transport section are reviewing the overall costs of the vehicle replacement programme in light of these additional tariffs. I've mentioned disruption in food deliveries, which could have an impact on school meals. Fuel supply shortages, again, could be delays at ports, etc. And obviously fuel shortages for our refuse collection and other council vehicles is something we need to be aware of. Increased project costs. The costs of imported materials may increase, which could see a rise in costs for building projects like 21st century schools, for example. There will be a need to increase the support and guidance to public and to businesses. Corporate risks, slide 2. Financial. There may well be a reduction in council tax received and a greater demand on services. As people start to lose jobs, etc., then perhaps they will look to have their council tax reduced or go on to other benefits. There will be an increased demand for social care. Increase in poverty is likely, and possibly homelessness as well as possible mental health issues with various anxieties, notwithstanding COVID as well. Our legal services may be required to undertake additional work, queries or instructions from client departments for guidance and support, and this is likely to be quite complex work which will need to be dealt with alongside normal business. Loss of access to EU funding for strategic projects. We've received £82 million within EU funds since 2001 to deliver 113 projects in Conwy, and we're still not quite sure what the replacement funding will be. There will be something, but we're still unclear at the moment. So the risks to businesses include tariffs and customs duties, as I've already mentioned. Businesses may be not ready for the change. Again, fuel supply. Loss of trading markets within the EU could affect the Welsh farming income. Financial hardship where businesses are already suffering through the COVID lockdown, and changes to the Common Agricultural Policy. This will have a major impact on the farming and rural communities with changes to direct payments to farmers. We're hoping that the Welsh Government will step in with an alternative, but we're again waiting to hear on that. The risks to our residents include obviously the increased cost of imported goods, potential impact on medical supplies. I do know that Betsy Cadwaladr and all the other health authorities have been asked to stockpile at least 6 weeks worth of supplies in case there are delays on the borders. Food poverty and diet related ill health. And it actually leads on to the next one, which is the increased likelihood of food fraud. This is compounded because we used to have, or we do have at the moment, EC-wide data systems and intelligence sharing, which we'll no longer have. So we could have poor quality or unsafe food coming into the market, and they're obviously going to be cheaper, and it may well be what people will buy instead. We also have care providers where possibly providers are unable to provide safe quality care due to lack of medical devices and clinical consumables, food shortages and increased service costs. More reliance on social care services, increased demand at social care first contact points, fuel supply again, and obviously fuel supply as well comes into heating homes at the moment in the cold weather as well, now that we're in the winter, and it will possibly lead to reduced community and personal resilience. The challenge is really, this all comes at a time when personal and economic resilience is probably at the lowest it's been in many a year. And of course, the challenge of preparing for all this at the same time as the pandemic can't be overestimated. In spite of all that, I'd like to leave you with a quote by T.S. Eliot, which says, "If you aren't in over your head, how do you know how tall you are?" So we have got challenges ahead of us, but we do feel that we are as prepared as we can be. Officers are working diligently on top of, of their existing day jobs to try and help our businesses and our residents to make sure that people are as prepared as we can be, and we're just keeping up with the latest information as best we can. So with that, thank you very much, and I'm happy to take any questions that you may have.
Diolch Barbara, diolch yn fawr iawn i chi am yr adroddiad a'r cyflwyniad yna. Right, I've got Nghonwy Edwards.
Diolch, Cadeirydd, thank you. Diolch i Barbara, thank you very much, Barbara, for running us through that. It is a complicated period ahead of us. It's been a complicated period before that as well. It's never been easy to work our way through European guidance and European laws, but certainly I think there are opportunities as well as challenges ahead of us. I'm afraid I was not as good as T.S. Eliot's coming up as wise words, but certainly it's all we can do is make sure that we as an authority as best prepared we can, and I think with the help of Barbara and the officers we are as strong as we can be looking forward into the future. There's going to be a heyday, I think, for bureaucracy dealing with this. That's the biggest risk, and there will be a whole lot of civil servants rubbing their hands with the chance of creating rules unnecessary. Hopefully not, but that's usually the case. There's the knowns, and there's certainly the unknowns that we've got to be aware of, and that's all we can is look at all the guidance that come out of Europe, look at what's happening in America. That in itself is going to have an impact on the elections there. As we've noticed, Trump is would have gone probably for deals with the UK, whereas Biden may not be as helpful, because I think Biden is more pro-Europe than Trump. But there are a whole lot of unknowns, but I think we are well placed, and Barbara certainly has done her homework to keep us well informed. So thank you, Barbara.
Diolch, Gronwy. Cynghorydd Aron Wyn.
Diolch, Austin. Sori, dwi am gadw'r camera i ffwrdd oherwydd cyswllt y we gwael. Diolch fawr iawn I ti, Barbara, am yr adroddiad cynhwysfawr ond brawychus yna. Mae gennau gwbl o gwestiynau os gai. Mae'r cwestiwn cyntaf ynglyn â yr allforio da byw i'r Undeb Ewropeaidd o flwyddyn newydd ymlaen. Ydyn ni'n gwybod faint o meithwyr yng Nghonwy sydd ar hyn o bryd yn allforio cynnyrch i'r farchnad sengl? Ac os ydyn ni, beth ydyn ni fel cyngor yn wneud I helpu meithwyr paratoi at y gyfundrefn newydd?
Wel, da ni ddim yn gwybod digon ar y funud, cynghorydd, mae drwy gen I. Dwi am drio ffendio hynny fedrai allan I chi, a fedrai bob amser dod yn ôl ata chi. Mae yna llawer o gyfarfodydd yn mynd ymlaen, fel da chi'n medru dychmygu yn mynd ymlaen ar y funud. Ac unwaith mae gennym ni rhyw fath o gynlyniad ohonyn nhw, fedrai adael I chi wybod yn union. Mae WLGA yn gweithio efo'r Rural Forum, a dwi'n gwybod bod yna lot o wybodaeth yn mynd ymlaen trwy hwnnw I amaethwyr. Ond fedrai drio ffendio hynny fedrai allan I chi. Unwaith bydd yr cyfarfodydd wedi cymryd lle, a bydd yna rhyw fath o gynlyniad, os di hynna'n oce.
Aron?
Ie, na, champion, diolch ti am hynny. Gai ofyn hefyd ta, ynglyn â'r cynllun setlo hefyd, dwi'n dall bod yna o'r adroddiad 10,000 o wladolion yr Undeb Ewropeaidd yng Nghymru ddim eto wedi cael cyfle I geisio am y cynllun setlo. Ydyn ni'n gwybod faint o weithwyr a staff Cyngor Conwy sy'n wladolion yr Undeb Ewropeaidd, a pha gyfranogaeth ydyn ni wedi rhoi iddyn nhw mwyn annog nhw I drio am y cynllun setlo yma?
Da ni wedi gwneud lot o wybodaeth allan ar yr intranet, ar y we fewnol, a does gynnon ni ddim, mae HR wedi bod yn trio datganfod faint o bobl ella sydd yn disgyn I mewn i'r braced yna, ond pan da ni'n yn cymryd staff newydd, da ni ddim yn gofyn o lle oedd nhw'n dŵad. A di hynna rioed wedi bod yn broblem, wrth gwrs, yn tan rwan y lle. Ond da ni ddim yn meddwl bod gynnon ni ddim staff yng Nghonwy sydd yn disgyn I mewn i'r part yma. Da ni'n rhaid hynny o wybodaeth allan fedra ni ar y we I drio datganfod pobl eraill allan sydd yn Nghonwy, sydd yn gweithio yma neu yn byw yma I reid y gwybodaeth iddyn nhw. A da ni'n gweithio efo llyfrgelloedd hefyd, ac hefo, mae gynnon ni link efo, sori, dwi'n yn gwybod beth I Citizens Advice Bureau yn Gymraeg, ond mae gynnon ni link efo nhw hefyd I helpu pobl sydd yn gallu llenwi ffurflenni ac yn y blaen.
Ie, gwych, diolch fawr iawn.
Iawn, Aron. Oce, diolch I ti, Barbara. Reit, dwi am dod â prif weithredwr Iwan Davies I fewn.
Diolch, Cadeirydd. I'd just like to thank Barbara for bringing this report to you. We wanted to, as asked for, to explain what structure we have in place in order to keep an eye on these things as they're progressing. There are very few levers that we have as a council, I believe, in terms of what the outcomes of the position is going to be. But we wanted to make it clear to you that we are, when I say we, Barbara is all over, as you can tell, an absolute expert in this and has a really good feel for what's going on. I think it's also right that I reflect to you that what Barbara has presented in terms of risks are that they're risks. They're not things that we are predicting will happen, but in the nature of any sort of risk register, you will inevitably highlight risks rather than necessarily opportunities. There may well be opportunities, who knows, but time will tell. It's 18 months or so ago, Brexit was one of our biggest areas of concern as a nation, I think, and as a county borough. Of course, that's been put into a huge perspective given the last 7 or 8 months that we've been going through. But things will change, and there will be consequences. But I just wanted to cover those 2 things. One, thanks to Barbara for not just for the report, but for her diligence in covering all of these issues. But just highlighting that what was being presented is the risks, not our predictions. Thanks.
Diolch, Iwan. Right, I've got Councillor Chris Hughes and then Councillor Anne McCaffrey.
Thanks, Chair. And like Aaron, I'm having difficulty with my connection today, so I'm leaving the video off. I wanted to thank officers for the report. I think I asked for this at the last meeting because of the discussions that were going on at the time. I think it's really, we all get the national information almost on a daily basis. Sometimes we get sick of the information we get too much information, but it is and has proven at times to be difficult to get the local information. So I'm really, really grateful to the officers for bringing this before us today, because it does help us understand what those risks are when we're talking to residents and to businesses. But I'm sure as we get closer and closer, there will be more and more inquiries, and we need that information in order to be able to respond adequately to people's concerns. So thank you to everyone for that information today.
Diolch, Chris. Anne McCaffrey.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Barbara. My questions are around the resource sort of implications of all of this, Barbara, and obviously I read with quite interest on 6.2 that we've actually had some transition funding from WLGA via Welsh Government. I'm quite keen to understand what does that look like in terms of how much, as opposed to how much was funded, and indeed how much was not funded, really. And then more importantly, I mean, obviously we're in a forward planning phase now. Presumably part of your forward plans are about what sort of implementation resource is needed for the different scenarios that could actually become reality from the 1st of Jan. So I just wondered what those resource plans sort of looked like, and indeed the sort of funding requirement. We've talked about impact on food. There's obviously going to be differences in terms of sort of legislation. There's obviously going to be a massive impact in terms of businesses who are actually going to be looking for sort of support and direction. So just wondered about the future plans and resource requirement. Thanks, Barbara.
Thanks, Councillor Anne. Yes, we received funding from the WLGA, oh gosh, some 18 months ago, I think. And it's come through in various little tranches for specific things. So initially we had some money to resource the actual looking at this EU scenarios, really, as consequences of Brexit. So we received that funding. We also received funding to help our regulatory services with the export health certificates. Some of the transition funding we have used to send out information to residents and to businesses, so that's some of it has been used for that. We also had a tranche of money which was looking at food poverty, and specifically that has gone out to our 10 food banks within the authority area, and there is some more money on the way to the recognised food banks. So that has been supported as well out of the money. There is also funding to look at regulatory services and the export health certificates that will be required. So the officers within the various services are aware that this funding is there. We've drawn it down from the WLGA as requested. We are holding it until we know what additional resource we need, and then we can use that then to fund that resource. So at the moment, the only things that have been spent on really are around the food poverty, which went out early on in the COVID lockdown. And as I said, there is a second tranche now available. We are contacting our food banks to see if they are requiring any further funding. So we are holding the funds, and we're just waiting to see what additional resource we need. But we can call on that funding if required.
So thanks for that, Barbara. And just before you perhaps answer my sort of second part of the question, just on your answer to date, there's an organisation set up locally here in the sort of Pemamar Dogwalchi area called Pobl Pen, and like Food Bank, it's providing food to people in need across the local area, Dogwalchi, Capililo, and Pemamar. And I'm not sure if the scope of funding that you're talking about would be able to incorporate them, because they're doing fantastic work and have actually sort of set up, in essence, a kitchen within our local community hall. So perhaps you could answer that before you go on to the future resource question.
Yeah, I'm sure it's something that we could look at, Councillor Anne. I'm sure there are those all across the county. We only have a finite amount of money left within the funding, so it will just we are working with revenues and benefits. So where people are approaching our benefits department, they're being directed to specific food banks within Conwy, and those are the food banks that we are supporting, because we're actually directing our residents to them. So but certainly if you'd like to send me some information on Pobl Pen, then we can certainly have a look at that as well.
Fantastic.
That's not a problem.
Yeah. And then what about future resource requirements, you know, as we move from forward planning into the implementation phase? I mean, I appreciate we're as uncertain as ever in terms of what we're going to be facing in 6-8 weeks, whatever it is, and obviously all of that is tough, but presumably we've been scenario planning around the major implications that we're going to have to deal with in some sort of shape or form. So as a resource committee, I wonder if you could share the work that's been done in terms of what that implementation resource could look like.
Yeah, I mean, it is very much at planning stage, because until it actually hits, we don't know exactly what we're going to need. We have, as I said, had funding for regulatory services for the export health certificates, but we're honestly not quite sure what the demand is going to be. People may well be quite self-sufficient, businesses may well be able to manage quite well and be prepared and everything else. So as Chief Executive mentioned earlier, these are just risks that I've pointed out really, and they are also worst case scenario risks. And it was really just to raise awareness of the type of things that may happen, but I don't think they're all going to happen on the 1st of January either. I think a lot of these will will evolve as time goes on, and as we're more aware of all the changes that need to take place. So the only thing that's going to change, I think, on the 1st of January is the likelihood of border controls in Europe when our businesses are trying to export to Europe. I think from day one, that's going to be the immediate change, and businesses are trying to be prepared for that. So really, until until these things start evolving and we see what resources we need, it's very difficult to plan for that at the moment.
Okay, thanks, Barbara. Thank you.
Okay, right. Next up, Joan Vaughan, and then Cynghorydd Wyn Jones. Joan, unmute yourself.
Thank you, Chair. Conwy County, we only have tourism and agriculture. So I'm wondering, you know, when we're talking to Welsh Government, we have to emphasise those are our two industries, tourism and agriculture. And I'm just wondering, how do you think we will be affected by these European changes?
Tourism, I don't think is going to be affected at all, hardly. It may well be that you might need a visa if you want to go to Estonia or somewhere in Europe. But really, I think generally, I don't think we'll notice any change at all in tourism. Agriculture, yes, there will be a change to agriculture because of the changes to the Common Agricultural Policy and the funding that we've previously received from Europe. The direct payment to farmers will continue in some way, shape or form. Again, we're really not sure as to that at the moment, but the current payments and projects from the Common Agricultural Policy are continuing until 2022, because they're in the existing European programme, which we always have 2 years after the end of the programme in which to spend the money. So there is still going to be money available. It's just that obviously at the end of that period there will be a change. But in that process, we're hoping that the Welsh Government will have picked that up, and the new funding stream, whatever that may be, will actually then fill the gap.
Thank you very much, Barbara. Very informative.
Thank you.
Diolch, Joan. Right, Cynghorydd Wyn Jones a wedyn Gronwy.
Diolch Cadeirydd. Diolch yn fawr iawn eto I Barbara am adroddiad mor glir as sydd bosib bod dan yr amgylchiadau. Da ni mewn 3 crisis I raddau. Mae gen i'r pandemig, mae gen I Brexit, a da ni'n cael yn arwain gan y llywodraeth mwyaf diallu yn Lloegr yn hanes co fi sicr. Mae o'n dros hanod trio gwneud trefn allan o'r holl sefyllfa. Oedd yng nghwestiwn i'n debyg iawn i'n cynghorydd Ann, ond mae gen i'n ychwanegol. Hynny ydi, faint o gyngor fedrwn ni sgynnon ni ar gael I roed I busnesau ar llawr gwlad. Hynny ydi, dwi'n gwerthfawrogi yr wybodaeth sgyn Barbara, ond fydd gyda ni linell gymorth I gael ar gyfer busnesau sydd angen cymorth hefo mewnforio neu allforio yn ystod yr misoedd nesaf yma.
Wel, mae dipyn go lew o gymorth allan yna. Dwi'n gwybod mae gweinidog Ken Gates wedi gyrru allan I busnesau yr wythnos dwytha yma efo gwybodaeth. Mae lot o wybodaeth ar Busnes Wales, ar wefan Busnes Wales, neu I gynghori efo nhw. Mae gynnon ni hefyd, wrth gwrs, tîm yn ganolfan busnes, wel, dyna lle maen nhw fel arfer. Ac maen nhw, ond wrth gwrs maen nhw'n gweithio efo bob math o grantiau eraill ar y funud, a maen nhw yn brysur ofnadwy. Ond mae'r gwybodaeth gynnon nhw hefyd, ac allan ni ganolbwyntio pobl at y wefan Busnes Wales I drio helpu iddyn nhw. Ond mae yna lot fawr o wybodaeth allan yna. Swn i'n meddwl bydd rhan fwyaf o busnesau yn gallu cymryd y gwybodaeth a wneud eu trefniadau hunan, ond os ddim, wrth gwrs mae gynnon ni swyddogion sydd yn mynd I allu helpu nhw gobeithio erbyn cyntaf mis Ionawr.
Diolch Barbara. Ac un cwestiwn arall, ar ran yr ochr dwristiaeth, dwi'n derbyn yn ymarferol dylai bod yna ddim gwahaniaeth. Os yna risg bod gweddill Ewrop yn gweld Prydain fatha gwlad eitha xenophobic, a fydden nhw'n weld bydd y deheu.
Ti'n torri fyny Wyn?
Na I diffodd y fideo.
Iawn. Lot gwell.
Diolch am yr ateb, Barbara. Ar ran twristiaeth sy'n bod bwysig I ni, os na risg bod Prydain cael ei weld fatha gwlad xenophobic I weddill Ewrop, a bydd y bobl sydd wedi arfer dod yma yn ffindio bod dod Ewrop yn llai deniadol na mae wedi bod yn y gorffennol?
Sgyn I matab hyn am y drwg I ni. Yr unig beth fydda I ddeud ydy, wrth gwrs, fydda ni yn gwneud bob dim fedra ni I farchnata Cymru, I dderbyn pobl o bob man, o bob cwr o'r byd, really, I ddod yma, I drio denu nhw yma, ond mae drwg I ni, sgyn I ddim amcan o sut maen nhw'n actually meddwl am y wlad rwan.
Diolch Barbara.
Iawn, diolch o'r Wyn. Reit, I've got Councillor Gronwy Edwards, then Cynghorydd Gareth Jones, and then finally Harry Saville. Gronwy.
Dear Austin, thank you. I won't get political like Councillor Wynne. And
Diolch, Gronwy.
This wasn't the decision of the government. Obviously, this was a decision taken by the public to come out of Europe. So they're following what the result of the vote was. And we are, as far as farming, and as a farmer, farming have always faced change as far as European funding and as far as national funding. CAP reform was going on before the referendum in any case, and at the end, the Common Agricultural Policy seemed imminent in any case. Farmers will adapt, as they always have done and will have to these circumstances as they arise. But to ask Barbara to be crystal ball gazing about whether people from Europe will see us as xenophobic is a rather challenging question for anybody to answer. I don't think that will be the case. Britain and Wales is still a fantastic place to come on holiday. And as Portfolio Member for Economic Development and Tourism, I will certainly be pushing Wales as a fantastic place to come on holiday. And I think we have everything to look forward to as far as I'm concerned. Once we get over the political gerrymandering, I think Wales has a really bright future, depending on whoever leads us.
Iawn, o'n am cwestiwn te.
With that.
Okay, iawn. Okay, diolch yn fawr. Reit, Gareth Jones.
Cadeirydd, diolch yn fawr iawn i chi. Mae'n dal mi siarad. Dwi'n hefyd eisiau diolch yn fawr iawn i Barbara am yn atgoffa ni, wrth gwrs, gydag adroddiad trelwyr iawn, mor anodd oedd i'w llunio ar rhagweld pethau. Ac yn iawn felly roedd hi'n cyfeirio hefyd at Covid. A dwi'n meddwl bod ni i gyd wedi canolbwyntio gymaint ar Covid yn ystod y misoedd dwytha yma. Dwi'n gwybod bod pobl fel Barbara, wrth gwrs, wedi gorfod ac wedi canolbwyntio ar Brexit a be mae'n ei olygu. Yr unig apel sydd genna i ydy, mae yna broblemau, mae yna broblem Covid a mae yna broblem Brexit, dwedwn ni. Ac efallai'r apel sy'n ni'n wneud ydy bod yn strategaeth ni, a dwi'n derbyn be mae Iwan wedi rannu hefo ni, does am llawer o levers allwn ni i ddefnyddio. Ond mor bwysig ydy i ni ystyried y ddwy broblem yma yn un. Achos bygythiad i'n cymunedau ni sydd gynna ni, gobeithio fydd o ddim, ond mae'r bygythiad yna. Ac dwi'n meddwl y bydda fo yn anoedd i ystyried, wel, dyna Brexit y fan yna a Covid y fan yna. Eisoes mae'n Barbara wedi cyfeirio at y cefndir pandemig. A dwi'n meddwl pa bynnag strategaeth mae'r cyngor yma ni ddatblygu a drwy'r arweinydd, a'r cabinet ag ati, bod ni'n edrych ar yr darlun eang cyfan yna ac ystyried bob peth sydd awnelo a y bygythiadau a'r heriau i ni, achos nid un problem Brexit ar wahân i Covid ydw i'n ei weld, ond y ddau beth at ei gilydd ac yn enwedig pan ydych chi'n sôn am dwristiaeth fel ydych chi wedi cyfeirio at, allwch chi ddim gwahanu y ddau beth yma. Mae un yn mynd i effeithio yn ofnadwy ar y llall. Ac dyna'r apel swn i'n ei wneud ydy bod ni yn ystyried yn gynhwysfawr be ydy'r heriau a nid yw un broblem yma a broblem fan draw ydy o, ond bob peth yn dod at ei gilydd. Diolch, Cadeirydd.
Diolch, Gareth. Right, Councillor Harry Saville, and then finally, Councillor Ronnie Hughes.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of points I want to pick up on the impacts on tourism. So first one, shortly after the referendum, when the pound devalued, I seem to remember there was an uptick in tourists coming to the UK because it became a more attractive tourist destination, because they simply got, to put it bluntly, more bang for their buck. I just wondered whether or not there'd been any analysis to see whether or not that trend had continued. And the second question I've got involving tourism is that some of the hotels in Llandudno have explained to me that their main concern about Brexit is around the labour market. At the moment, they're heavily reliant on immigrant labour. They feel that EU migrants do a better job than other people. That's simply their opinion. What I wanted to know is, as part of the North Wales Growth Deal, I thought this council had committed to creating a tourism school or tourism academy locally. And I just wondered, when was that likely to come online, and how will that help to actually redress the balance so we can see more local people in local jobs?
Thank you, Harry. Barbara?
Gosh, that's another impossible question.
Gnadora.
In terms of I'll take the second part first, if I may. In terms of the growth deal, I know that members will be reviewing that in the coming month or so now left, isn't it, to agree that. The growth deal, as you know, is just a means of funding, like any other means of funding, and it is to deliver certain projects, and one of those projects is to look at tourism within Conwy. Now, how soon that will start, once we hopefully receive approval from the two governments, I'm sorry, I have no answer to that one, but obviously it is something that we do look at as very strategically important for the region, which is why it's actually in there. And also it's to look at tourism as a career, as opposed to something that people fall into because they can't find another job, which is what a lot of people obviously have possibly done in the past. In terms of the European labour within the hotels, obviously prior to COVID and the sort of hotel lockdowns, and I'm sure a lot of those people have now potentially either gone home, possibly even lost their jobs if they're not furloughed, then the EU settlement scheme, which is why this is so important to us, is the EU settlement scheme will allow those people to stay and continue to work in the UK. The extension to that now is June 2021. They need to apply. It's a very simple application process, but we are trying to encourage everyone. And what we have done is we have notified all the. It's equally important in the care sector as well. I may add. I know that tourism was your question, but we have encouraged our care home providers and all our hoteliers to pass on information to their European staff members to let them know about the settlement service and the guidance that's available for them to stay and apply to continue to live and work in Wales.
Diolch, Barbara. I'm going to bring in Councillor Sam Rowlands. He's got some clarification on the growth deal.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, everybody. Just on that specific question with regards to the Tourism Academy, that won't be completed for a few years yet, but there are other things that we can do aside from the academy itself. That's a large capital scheme with a project linked to it within the tourism sector, but there's other things that we could consider with the skills board and things like that, if there are gaps in some of those skills that we could look to support and plug. So perhaps that's something we should raise through the skills board to see, is there anything in the meantime we can do rather than waiting for a big new shiny building to be built. There might be other things that we can do to support that sector in the meantime. Thanks, Chair.
Diolch, Sam. Harry, are you happy? Well, I know you're never
reasonably.
happy.
I mean, I welcomed what Sam said about looking at if there was a stopgap to help increase skills locally. If there was an impact from Brexit, that is useful. I just wondered though, the original point I made about an uptick in tourism to the UK immediately after the referendum, has that obviously it will have been impacted by COVID, but COVID aside, have we seen that fall back?
Sorry, I've no answer to that one. Tourism is not my forte. I leave that to other officers, but I can certainly find out for you if you wish. I can make inquiries of our business support officers and find out.
Can I just say, for clarification, certainly the figures that we've had from the tourism survey is that tourism has very much been on the
So Grom is muted.
Gronwy, ti muted.
Sorry, certainly looking at the figures from the tourism surveys we've had, there's been a growth in tourism year on year now, and it's hopefully will continue when we come out of this COVID period. The trend is certainly that Wales is doing extremely well.
Iawn, diolch yn fawr. Okay, Harry, are you happy with that for now? Thank you, Harry. Right, finally, Councillor Ronnie Hughes. Good morning, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just get a point of clarification of Barbara before I say anything? Barbara, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Barbara, can you just clarify now? You said it's going to be 2 years for the extension for the rural funding. Would that mean that if there's any tariff put on land, would that come in January, or would they have to wait for 2 years?
No, the tariffs will happen from January. It's just the funding that's already in the Common Agricultural Policy and in the Rural Development Programme that's safe until 2022, but the tariffs will come in from January.
The tariffs could be quite substantial on land. That's the last one I heard from Europe. It could be, and it's going to have an effect dramatically in Conwy on the rural area, no doubt about it. And if we can just go back to what we've been discussing today, the deprivation figures for Conwy is 70% of GDP. The new funding that is going to come from central government is going to include the 22 authorities. And I'll say to all the committee members, that is wrong. There were only 13 or 15 authorities that were drawing down the European money. It should go on a formula base. And this council should be putting more pressure onto the Welsh Assembly and onto central governments, because I know Sam has got a key in the door there, to start saying, we want a good share. And what worries me is, again now, is that we're looking at the GDP of 70%. And the reason why it's never gone up, and that's through me as well, or in the past, we rely a lot on tourism. And we have an opportunity here to rely on tourism, but move over to something else with new ideas. You know, when you have something like this that's going on now, you need ideas on the shelf. You need councillors to sit down and say, this is what we want to spend the capital programme on. We've got these ideas. There's no use saying, oh, we want 60 million, but we don't know what we're going to spend it on. We've got to back ourselves up to say how we're going to spend it and how we're going to go about it. You know, there's going to be a double whammy here with Brexit and with what's gone on with the plague. We're going to cop it really hard in Conwy. I'm convinced of that. But the council itself, and I can't propose anything because I'm no longer on the committee, but the council itself should have put a notice of motion in saying that we should have the fair share of the funding. I cannot for the life of me see what, I know Flint and Wrexham, their GDP is 120. How they can justify taking away money from us by putting it into Wrexham and Flint, I just can't see that being fair. This authority's been badly done to before, and I don't think we should be badly done to for the future. You know, I think the council should put a notice of motion in saying that we want a formula-based issue. And just on the final points that Nghonwy made, Biden's only concern is losing the Irish agreement. That's what the concern's coming from thing. If that Irish agreement is broken, because they're going to be taken to court about it, if that's broken, all hell's going to break loose. But I honestly think councillors sitting on this committee today should make a resolution to see that Conwy gets a fair deal.
Thank you, Ronnie. I don't think you can come back on that, can you, Barbara?
No, but I'd like to see the members of the committee coming back.
All right. Okay, then. Does anybody want to come back on what Ronnie Hughes has said quickly?
Yes, Chair.
Yeah, go on, John.
What, Ronnie, are you wanting a proposal from this committee to do what?
The new funding is going to come from central government at some stage. They've promised that this funding will come to Wales. We should be getting as the same formula when we had it from the EU, it should be coming to Conwy, not going to the other. What falls into this trap is Cardiff and Swansea come into the equation, not Swansea, Cardiff. So if Cardiff comes in, we will get absolutely nothing.
So
if we can't see that, we can't see nothing.
Right. So you want us to put forward to the WLGA, to Welsh Government, that we retain the original EU formula for West Wales.
Yeah, and I don't look. It's not just the Welsh Assembly issue. This is central government. Central governments have a major role to play with this, and there's been an argument who's going to distribute the money: central government or the Welsh Assembly. You know, take your choice. But I feel that we should be putting a case forward to say, hey, you can't take it away from us after you promised that it would be no difference.
Right. I'm unsure of the wording you want this committee.
You can't put that down.
All right. Well, can I propose that this committee makes representation that the formula for the funding stays the same as it was under the EU rules?
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Before I ask for a seconder to Joan's proposal, I want to bring in Councillor Sam Rowlands.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I just wonder whether what we should be saying is, or what the committee should be saying is something more in line with that Conwy should do no worse and should only do better than in previous. Because the formula, I think it'd be quite hard to expect a formula to remain exactly the same. I just wonder whether I completely agree with Ronnie's sentiment here. So please hear me correctly. That the sentiment I completely agree with in terms of the detail of what we should be proposing. I wonder whether we just should. I'm comfortable, you know, as Ronnie suggested, something goes into full council as some sort of resolution as a statement. And a bit concerned about trying to put something together now. I wonder whether it's your scrutiny committee. Do whatever you want. But by saying the formula remains the same, that might restrict things. Because there might be something better. That's the issue. We might be able to do better than staying the same. Appreciate Ronnie's concerns. We don't want things to get worse. Happy to make that statement. We don't want things to get worse, but there could be an even better solution for us.
Right, I will amend the proposal to say that we should not be worse off. Okay. Does that make any sense?
That's fine. Is there a seconder for Joan's proposal? I can see Andrew Hinchcliffe has got his hand up. Andrew?
Yes, I second that. I think we will be worse off if we're not careful.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Quickly now, I'm going to go back to Ronnie. Are you happy with that, Ronnie?
I'm happy with that, but I also want to say...
I did say quickly.
We have to keep an eye on this tariff on the rural area.
Okay.
If it comes, we've got to be prepared.
All right. Right, back to Joan. Make your proposal, Joan.
That this committee puts to full council the proposal that for European funding, Conwy is not worse off than it was before.
Yeah, thank you. I've got a seconder for that. Right, I've got Anne McCaffrey and Chris Hughes. Now, I will allow you to speak, but quickly. Okay, so Anne McCaffrey, quick, please.
Thanks, Chair. A point of clarification. Obviously, European funding won't exist anymore, so I think we have to be a bit tighter in our wording here. I presume what Ronnie is referring to is the UK Prosperity Fund. So I think we need to be clear about articulating that. And equally, who's this to? Because patently, the UK Prosperity Fund is a UK government thing. So I think we just need to be clear what it is we're asking and who we're asking of it, really.
Okay, thank you. And Chris, quickly.
Thanks, Jem. My point was on a similar point to Councillor Ann's. It was about, I think, rather than European funding, it needs to refer to both UK and Welsh government funding designed to support our economic growth.
Okay, thank you. Did you hear that, Joan?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Can you,
I'm happy
right.
to include all that.
Okay.
I'm sure somebody will put the words together.
All right. Fine. Okay, then. So we've got that proposal and a seconder. Before that, though, I am conscious of the fact that we need a proposer and a seconder for the report. Nigel Smith, thank you. Have we got a seconder? Joan will second that. Thank you. With that one, I can ask for a show of hands for that one. Okay, thank you. Right, over to you, Dawn. Sally, right, Sally?
Okay, so we need to take a vote on Joan's proposal. Which
Yeah, can you clarify the proposal, please,
yes,
Sally?
I will try my best. Yes.
Yeah,
okay, so the proposal was that this committee puts forward to full council that in relation to the UK Prosperity Fund and also funding from Welsh Government, that Conwy Council is not worse off than previously.
Yeah, everybody happy with that? I can see a lot of nodding dogs, so I presume that you are happy. Ewan Davies has got his hand up. I'll quickly let him come in.
Would you mind if we try and finesse that wording for coming to council? Yeah. So we would certainly get the principle you're trying to achieve. We'll work on a clearer motion, if that's okay, Joe.
Okay, well,
that's fine.
Ronnie is nodding his head, so he seems to be happy. Okay, iawn, Sally, ymlaen â chdi.
Okay, yeah, so I'll read the names out. So for, against, or abstain. So Councillor Phil Capper.
For.
Councillor Jeff Corrie.
For.
Councillor Brian Cossey.
For.
Councillor Pauline Heap-Williams.
For.
Councillor Andrew Hinchliffe.
For.
Councillor Chris Hughes.
For.
Councillor Wyn Ellis-Jones.
Obliged.
Councillor Peter Lewis.
For.
Councillor Yvonne Lloyd.
Obliged.
Councillor Anne McCaffrey.
For.
Councillor Dave Rees.
For.
Councillor Austin Roberts.
Obliged.
Councillor Harry Saville.
For.
Councillor Nigel Smith.
Obliged.
Councillor Joan Vaughan.
For.
Councillor Andrew Wood.
For.
And Councillor Aaron Wynne.
Obliged.
Yeah, that's carried, Chair.
Iawn, diolch yn fawr iawn chi. Reit, o'r diwedd, gawn ni symud ymlaen i eitem 12, adroddiad blynyddol iechyd a diogelwch, a mae hwn yn cael ei gyflwyno gan Richard Evans. Sorry for the wait, Richard.
Hello, thank you very much for having me here today. This is the annual report that I have for you for the 1920 year, and the analysis goes from the 1st of April 2019 to the 31st of March 2020. Also to say that this is obviously an annual report, so we've got previous reports that it refers back to, and this is a continuum of that. So if I may, I'll go through the summary points. I've also got a very short presentation here of a 6-monthly update, so I thought that'd be valid given the circumstance we were in. I'll continue on that basis if that's okay. So in the 1920, we had 4 enforcement notices across the authority, which was an increase of 4 on the previous year. We had 1,163 accidents which were reported. Of these, and as I said, we have a county-wide system that we record a lot of accidents. So we look for trend analysis and incidences and emerging issues. The 30 of those were reported to the Health and Safety Executive under the reporting of injuries, diseases and dangerous occurrences regulations, and they are of the more serious. Of those incidents that we had as well, we had 33 of those incidents required a high-level investigation, which means that corporate health and safety took the lead in these, and 90 required at a medium level, which were predominantly led by the services, but with the corporate health and safety guidance on top of that. 40 of these incidents involved employees who were incapacitated due to a workplace accident, intrinsically sick due to the injuries or occurrences that they had. Corporate health and safety conducted 54 audits in that period, and our site self-assessment audit was completed in the January-February of last year, 1920, over 141 sites. We use the system called CAMS, which is the corporate management system that we have. And over the years, we've built in 2 systems that are live at the moment and 1 that we're working on. The 2 that are live are the incident management system and the audit management system. And we have those because, again, it's a consistent way to record our information that enables all those line managers and others real-time information, and that we can work through that. We obviously work across the board, education and across. So one of the highlight ones there at 1.7 is that inconsistencies have been identified within the school sector, staff not consistently attending training or corporate development. We've had a project running for a couple of years on the management of contractors, which has brought up our compliance among our contractors, ensuring that they are all registered to an accredited scheme. And we've been working with, this one's pre-COVID, with the case social care to support providers as well to raise their standards in the care homes there. There's a lot of detail in the report, and that you can see, and I'll obviously take questions on afterwards. I'd like to just run through the recommendations, if that's all right, and then move on to the half-yearly overview that we can have a quick look at as well. So recommendation 1 was the 2.1 there, the Education Service, CIDT and ICT, resolve the issues regarding CAMS audit for schools. This has been progressed, and business managers and the majority of schools now have access to them. There are some areas where our systems and IT systems differ slightly, particularly in the foundation schools where they're not using our infrastructure, and a couple of secondary schools. But the CAMS software is further rolled out to service managers without access to have access to ensure that they have sight and ownership of their sections outstanding actions, enable them to look at their specific dashboard reports. Again, this hasn't been rolled out entirely to the managers across the authority. And that the corporate health and safety resumes the Protection of Employees Board, and that service manager report monitoring actually will reduce the accidents of violence and aggression. The Protection of the Employees Board is cross-department, cross-service areas that particularly look at violence and aggression in the workplace and emerging instances. And the 2.4 there, that services manager the working practices of employees who have multiple incidences and put in measures to prevent reoccurrence. So they're the main recommendations for the report. If I may, can I present my screen and give you a 6-monthly update?
Yes, you may, by all means, yeah.
Thank you. Is this available for people to see now?
Yes.
Yes, I can see it, yeah.
Okay, so this report dated then 1st of April 2020 to the 30th of September 2020 as an update. Obviously, it's been some changing times here. We've had no enforcement notices this period. The accidents, as you can see there, have come down dramatically, and obviously with our periods of school shuttage and also leisure industries are accounted to that. Our audits that we've completed have gone up to 153. 149 of these were COVID visits in preparation for our sites to be opening up. We've worked extremely well with our colleagues in education and across the piece there to ensure that we've got consistent standards to the reopening of our areas, and in particular to the schools. And that round was obviously completed in the first catch-up sessions, and also again then in September. Our investigations are down, as you can see there, as are the days incapacity to a worker and RIDDOR reports, and our training courses, which are down as well. And the delegates that we have had also on our training courses are down. Again, of course, face-to-face training had to stop immediately on the time of COVID. So just another little shed there. So incidents involving employees were down. Incidents involving members of the public were down, and also pupils were down. The only one that was going up there was the incidents involving social care clients, and that had gone up in that 6-monthly picture as well. Again, maybe resulted to the COVID. An overview then of what we've done. We've produced the generic risk assessments, guidance and procedures throughout the COVID-19. We've reviewed, commented and advised on all the opening risk assessments, at least twice of those. We've visited schools as a priority, and all have had at least one visit. All our site risk assessments, including multi-occupancy sites, visits to priority, and they've all had at least one. At the time of writing the report, there was 23 pending. I think there's 8 pending now. CHS, Corporate Health and Safety, also review every risk assessment where 2-metre social distancing cannot be maintained to ensure there's correct procedures in place there. They are working across the organisation in the various renewal boards, work-wise projects and boards. We have also provided support to the third sector and providers with our guidance, sharing what we have built up and sharing our good practice. And we have also visited some of our providers there, people like Crest, people like Livability and Ventura, to ensure that we can manage and get our vulnerable clients back to some sort of stability, because that's extremely important. We've developed and maintained our procedures and guidance, sometimes on a daily or twice daily basis. As you know, the guidance changes so frequently. Corporate health and safety itself has had no sickness absence over the period, and we've put in over 200 hours of overtime specifically related to COVID. And that's 5 officers within my unit there. And we've also had the ongoing work with civil contingencies that we work collaboratively with the North Wales Local Resilience Forum. And I'm currently working with them on secondary evacuation shelter and learning and development programs as we speak. There is a North Wales scenario testing towards the end of the month. And obviously the weather over the weekend has also tested us as well. That, I think, is my overview, and I'm very happy to take any questions if you have them.
Yeah. Diolch yn fawr, Richard. Thank you very much. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hands up. I'll start with Julie Fallon and then the Chief Exec, Iwan Davies. Julie.
Diolch. Yeah, I just wanted to come in really and highlight my thanks in terms of the support that Richard and his team have provided to education and to schools. I mean, it's been massive in terms of giving schools the confidence, especially that first time to reopen, with the support with the risk assessments, having the staff come in and walk through the risk assessments with head teachers and staff in the school. Really, I struggle to think of anything that has had more of an impact actually over the last few months in terms of our schools than the support that's been provided here to give them the confidence to open and that sort of security in the health and safety arrangements. So I just really wanted to say thank you so much. I know it's obviously increased demand massively on your team, and yeah, it just has been really powerful and very well appreciated by schools and by us as a cabinet and education services. So thanks, Richard.
Diolch, Julie. Ewan Davies.
Along similar lines, I'm glad that Richard pinched the opportunity to report on last year's report by giving us an update on the past 6 months, because I think that's probably the most significant thing in front of you today. And similarly, I'd like to thank Richard and his team for what they've done beyond education. I mean, they've been working with all our services to try and help a safe return to work where work had been in those relatively small number of places where work had been suspended. So yeah, just a word of thanks and appreciation. And as you say, that the 200 hours of overtime have been really well earned. Thanks.
Iawn, diolch Iwan. Ac a yna hefyd arannu oll ac i safio chydig o amser efallai ddiolch i Richard ar ran y pwyllgor yma am ei gyflwyniad heddiw, ac hefyd diolch i'w staff am y gwaith maen nhw wedi rhoi i fewn. Right, Councillor Peter Lewis and then Nigel Smith.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Richard. I think the one thing that we can get in from this report, that if you look at the 5-year figure, it's the number of incidents that is actually going down. And I think that's a reflection of you and your service in terms of the culture that you've built within Conwy. I've got one question, but I'd also like to propose all the recommendations as listed under two there.
Thank you, Peter.
In terms of the 6-month update you gave us, I think it's encouraging the way the figures are going. But in terms of the total accidents, I just wondered whether or not there was any particular service which had shown a significant improvement, or whether it was across the board. Thank you.
Richard?
I think generally the headline figures of the accidents and instances, that 1,100 plus, is a fluctuating figure, and it sometimes depends on the activities that we end up doing. I think that the figure really that we concentrate more is on the VIDOR reports, those more serious ones. Obviously, the times we have to report ourselves to the health and safety executive, and also particularly for me, those areas where people are getting harmed, being in work, doing what they come to do. I repeat it quite a lot, and it is getting through. But nobody comes to work to be hurt physically or mentally by the job they do. So they're the ones that I particularly have focus on. I'm very pleased and thankful that we get recognised. I think that it's been an absolute pleasure to work with our service managers, section managers, heads of service, and all during this very, very difficult time. And it's been a pleasure because we've had the foundations. We've got very good foundations. It is slightly disappointing when we spend a lot of time, resources, money, expertise and technical ability to build systems for people to use, and they don't get quite rolled out, which is why for the second year we're asking again that all managers have access to these systems. It is also prudent in these times as well. It stops paper getting shifted, it stops duplication of resources, and it enables people to have that real-time information in front of them so that service managers and section managers can actually focus and go a little bit more granular than we can do to look at those trends that they were having. Emerging issues at the moment is around violence and aggression. The figures that I have in at the moment are probably the same as last year, but we haven't been operating services to the level. So we're asking and encouraging people to obviously report those through, so we can look at any trend analysis, and it might also be reflective, and it probably is, isn't it, of the stress that everyone's been under, and the difficult circumstances that we're working within.
Yeah, Peter, are you happy with that?
Yes, I just, my question was relating to the 6-month figure. I just wondered really as to whether or not the fact that people working at home has had a significant effect in terms of those figures, really. Thank you.
They may have. People probably won't be as immediate in reporting an accident if they fall over at home as they were doing in Corfforaethol. We've also got a stellar system that, again, the foundations are good. We've got a bilingual online display screen equipment, your DSE, so looking after people's musculoskeletal requirements at home. We've had this system in place for a number of years now, and it's not just a question and answer. It's an online training and assessment tool and management system, so that if people require kit or it's identified that they can't set up in a way that's going to prevent musculoskeletal disorders, then that's a management system again that we've got embedded. And I do believe that we're probably the only one in North Wales with something like that. So again, good work, good solid work that we can ensure that we rise from as well. And I think that's one of the areas we will have to concentrate on moving forward is around the many issues associated with home working. I don't think it's for everyone. I think particularly I don't know, we're of an age, aren't we? I was very lucky to buy a house years and years ago that is of a size, and my heart breaks for those people who may be young families, small houses, children at home. It's not as easy for everybody else. And I think that as we move forward, when we're saying what are our office accommodation looking like, and what is our community support looking like, and how we're doing anything, I think we can embrace COVID, and I think we can use it to concentrate resources in the community, and I think we can make our resources available to those who need them.
Thank you, Richard. Are you happy now, Peter? Diolch fawr, Peter. Right, Nigel Smith, I take it you're going to second Peter's proposal?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd like to do that. I'd also like to congratulate the Cabinet Member, Emma, Richard and his team for an excellent report, a transparent report that highlights the good work that they do on behalf of us to maintain our properties as a safe environment for our valuable staff. I have one small question though. I notice on page 92, 3.6, it mentions 3 sites reported as needing improvement, and one of them was Corfforaethol. And my question to Richard is, on the state-of-the-art brand new building that's just celebrated its, just gone past its 12-month birthday, what were the improvements that were needed?
Excuse me, but without going into the detail of the report, I won't be able to pull that out of my mind at the moment. It would have been things, there are some little nuances. I think things like access and egress, and particularly around those people who may be visually impaired. There were some areas around that. I think there was areas to be honest, I'd rather not speculate. But again, this detail is available at service, and I said this is a highlight report, and those services do have those reports, or the self-assessment is reported by those services, They then go into the CAM system, so they have actions sitting against them. So they are well aware of what they need to do, but the scrutiny as well can be more at that detail. Apologies, I can't give you a more fuller answer. I can come back to you at another time.
It's okay. Thank you very much anyway. Thanks, Richard.
Thank you. Right, I've got a proposal and I got a seconder, but I also got Councillor Emma Leighton-Jones, who's been waiting patiently, and she is the portfolio holder. And then after Emma, I've got Councillor Harry Saville, and then Councillor Anne McCaffrey, and then we will go to the vote. So Councillor Emma Leighton, sgwelwch chi dda.
Diolch Cadeirydd am rhoi y cyfle I mi siarad. Thank you, I really appreciate it. I just want to say how important this report is for all members, in the fact that it highlights that consistent and robust approach we have to health and safety across the authority, and it's vital that we understand that. So it's really good to see some questions being asked. Also, I just want to take the opportunity to thank Richard and the team. As you've guessed by that 6-monthly update, they've worked their socks off under a huge amount of pressure to ensure that as a authority we adhere to that appropriate legislative requirements, and they're providing the leadership that's needed and the expertise that's vital. So I want to thank them for the work that they've done, and once more thank you Cadeirydd for giving me the opportunity.
Croeso Emma, a diolch I chdi. Right, Harry, have you got a question?
Yeah, I have. On page 98, we've got paragraph 1.3, and forgive me if this was touched on in the presentation, but it says all managers routinely have access to CAMs directly, apart from ERF and schools. Now, I would have thought ERF and schools would perhaps be the two services where we'd expect the highest number of incidents to be logged from, or accidents to occur. So I just wondered why managers in those two services didn't have direct access. It goes on to say that corporate health and safety support managers with data input with recording incidents. I mean, does that not take up more time than just letting these services do it themselves?
Richard?
Yes, that's the recommendation in the report, that all services have direct access, so their line managers can look at their staff, their areas. Nuances do exist. I certainly know that some of the reasons within schools was the IT access that we've certainly smoothed out for incidents and accidents. And there was an issue with our network in the schools, because they have a school network in the secondary schools. But we're certainly ironing those out, and I know Wynne and his team has worked diligently there as well. I think it's, as I said, yes, we support these systems. We've got training programs on our website. We've got lots of training videos for managers to gain access and to use it. And I think it just needs further rolling out. And again, you know, I think it's a theme. Corporate systems are corporate, and the more we use it, the more we use it. And people will get used to using it. People will have that. And I think in the more remote way we're working, that these sorts of advances in technology are more important to, as you said, reducing resources, and certainly reducing resources on my team to provide reports, because they're all there, and the timely analysis and reports are there. We could go straight onto the incident database now, and you would see anything that came in this morning or so they are live. Yeah, so that's why the recommendations in the report, so we do get everyone. Again, FLT's agreed with, it's been there, that everyone gets on the system who needs to be on it.
Okay, Harry, are you happy? Yeah?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Oh, lovely, thank you. Finally, your question, please, Anne.
I haven't got a question, Chair, but I've got some comments and indeed a bit of an amendment to the proposal that we've got in the report. I mean, everybody, including myself, would congratulate Richard and the team on a comprehensive report. It's clear and it's really well presented. and really evidences for me the progress that this small team continues to make and the vital part that they've played over the last 5 years particularly, and more recently within the COVID scenario. From my own experience as being a chair of governors, they turned up whenever they said they would, they're just in time, and their advice was constructive, reassuring and realistic. So Julie's comments are spot on. So well done, team. However, if we just focus on 2019 and 20, which is what the report in actual before us is about, some of the issues identified are déjà vu, they are recurring, and many are legal compliance issues. And I do hear Richard's underlying sort of frustration and plea, because, you know, his team, he and his team with others have worked very hard to lay the foundations here. Systems, training programs, all of the infrastructure that helps us really, as Emma's related to, a robust health and safety culture and infrastructure. But, you know, patently there is room for improvement. And I know the first 6 months he's just articulated has shown some improvement, which is to be welcomed. But when it comes to the recommendations, you know, he talks about that the health and safety leadership team accepts and supports the recommendations. I would like to just insert there a piece that it's about SLT and heads of service really reinforcing their management responsibilities in this key area, because I think Richard and his team have built the tools. And the step change now that we need is just this compliance culture. So I would just like to add that little piece to those recommendations to support Richard to move further forward than he currently is. And he's done a really grand job thus far. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Anne. What I was trying to say before I forgot to unmute myself was, Peter, are you happy to accept those amendments?
I just wonder how different these are from previous ones, and perhaps I'd like perhaps some guidance as to from Ewan Davis, if he's happy for that, before I agree to it.
Okay, Ewan.
I think with all sorts of corporate, when we say corporate, they're sort of all embracing issues. It's always difficult to get 100% compliance, but I assure you that I think Richard has alluded to this. We have the right culture in place. So where there are lapses in compliance, it's not through sort of willful disregard. It's typically through other pressures or other issues coming to the fore. But I'm happy to accept a responsibility on senior officers to comply with their health and safety requirements, certainly.
So you're happy with Anne's amendments?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, okay, Peter?
Yes, fine. I wasn't being pedantic. I was just aware, having been vice chair of this committee, yes. I know what work's been done in the past and whatever, and I know senior management take it seriously.
There's a lot of things I could accuse you of, Peter, but I don't think pedantic is one of them. Right, Councillor Dave Rees, as Vice Chair, I am going to allow you to speak, and then we shall take the amended vote.
Thank you, Chair. Richard, thank you very much for a very comprehensive report, but I just wanted a clarity on one particular item, please. Did you mention in your report that ERF are not quite on board with CAMS at the moment?
Correct.
Correct.
Yes.
I mean, you brought this item to this committee last year with 12 months on there again, and this has still not happened. Okay, that's quite interesting. I just want to make that clear to all members. There is one principal part of the council where quite a lot of accidents occur, quite serious accidents, because many of the jobs in the ERF are of a manual nature. So I think it needs highlighting that we need to move on here in the future. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Dave. That's a very good and relevant point.
I think this applies to schools as well, Chair, in fairness.
Yes, okay. Right then. Richard, do you want to come back?
Just to thank you all very, very much. And I've obviously relayed the comments that everyone's made back to my team as well. And just to confirm as well, it's not a stop. I said at FLT, we'll keep going, and we will all get through this by maintaining these gun standards. We'll be fine. We'll get through it.
Thank you, Richard. Right, I'm going to go on. Before I go on, I just want to check with Councillor Nigel Smith, who seconded Peter Lewis. Are you happy to second the amendments as well, Peter? Nigel?
Yes, I am, Chair.
Thank you, Nigel. Right, we'll go on to the vote. Sally?
Yeah, okay, so I'll read out the names. So Councillor Phil Capper.
For.
Councillor Jeff Corrie.
For.
Councillor Brian Cossey.
For.
Councillor Pauline Heap-Williams.
For.
Councillor Andrew Hinchliffe.
For.
Councillor Chris Hughes.
For.
Councillor Wyn Ellis-Jones.
Oblaid.
Councillor Peter Lewis.
For.
Councillor Yvonne Lloyd. Councillor Yvonne still here? No, I don't think so. Okay, Councillor Anne McCaffrey.
For.
Councillor Dave Rees.
For.
Councillor Austin Roberts.
Oblaid.
Councillor Harry Saville.
For.
Councillor Nigel Smith.
For.
Councillor Joan Vaughan.
For.
Councillor Andrew Wood.
For.
And Councillor Aaron Wynne.
Oblaid.
Yeah, that's carried, Chair.
O blaid hefyd, oedd wedi blocio.
Oh, na ni, ideal, diolch. Yeah, that's carried, Chair.
Iawn, diolch yn fawr, Sally. Reit, ymlaen â ni I eitem 12 a adroddiad blynyddol, 13 a asesu sefyllfa gyllidebol 2020-2021 a Andrew Kirkham yn cyflwyno. Andrew, are you still with us?
Certainly am, Chair.
Thank you. Well, I'm glad you are.
Right. Oh, there we go. Dawn is going to put the report on the screen so we can go through it together. We'll start on paragraph 3.1, which is the details, please. Thank you. So this is the second published budget report in respect of 2021. The previous one was on the 21st of September, and that followed two informal presentations in June and August. Paragraph 3.2 refers to the hope of producing a recovery plan and a more comprehensive report. We've not quite managed to do that, mainly because of the pace of problems that have arisen over the past 50 days or so in terms of addressing other very pressing issues. And it's quite interesting, isn't it, that the last report was written on the 7th of September. This was written on the 20th of October. And in those 43 days, so much has happened. We've moved from a position of potentially containing the pandemic to one that is showing that we're certainly not there at this point in time. And I guess our offices, our services have been responding to those pressures over the past 2 months. So things that we may have wished to do, unfortunately, we've not been able to do as completely as possible, and this report reflects that to a large extent. We're still working on the same premise as last time, i.e. addressing the important issues in respect of our financial position. And table 1, just after paragraph 3.8, reflects one of those. We've made claims for additional expenditure and lost income for £10 million,
and at this point in time, we've received grant support of £9.5 million. And I think that members will agree with me that that's been, you know, time well spent to secure, to identify that expenditure, to identify the income we've lost, and to pretty well successfully manage to put in claims and get it refunded. The latest claim for expenditure, 520,000, was only made on the 15th of October. So that's why that's nil at the moment. Welsh Government is still assessing it. So, as I say, time well spent in terms of what the Services and Finance Department have been doing in respect of our overall financial position. Paragraph 3.10 does point out that this process is, I've called it resource hungry, but come back to it, it's time well spent. We have in the past talked about grants being distributed by formula to save, if you like, the red tape of completing claims, but I must say that a formula wouldn't have delivered the support we need or have needed so far. So I come back to it, yes, resource hungry, but time well spent to secure that funding for Conwy. Moving on, you can see, as I say, the expenditure that we've claimed and the grant we've got and the income. A lot of the expenditure relates to paragraph 3.11, points out social care and other areas. We've not had everything back that we've claimed, but I come back to it. We've been relatively successful in terms of what we have put together in terms of lost income. Again, we were successful in claiming what we'd lost in what they call tranche 1, and the tranche 2, in other words, everything other than the venue, car parking, tramway, waste collection, etc. Successful in our first quarter claim for that lost income. We are compiling the second quarter claim as we speak, and that's due to go to Welsh Government in early November. I think it's the 10th. And we'll have to wait and see how we go on there. In terms of furlough, we've claimed grant in the sum of, well, when writing this report, just over £1 million. The September claim went in for 120 just after this report was written. And again, you know, things are so fast moving at the time of writing. The furlough grant was to end. Sorry, the furlough arrangement was to end at the end of October, but of course, as from Saturday, the furlough process will be extended. I think it's till the end of December as things stand. So we'll be carrying on with that for the next few months. And as an aside, that grant that we've claimed from the UK government reduces our claim to the Welsh Government. So we are helping Wales in terms of what we tried to do with regard to the furlough arrangements. We can see from table 1 that already we are, if you like, overspent by 263,000 on the expenditure and 139 on the income, and that forms part of the table later on that we'll come to very shortly. So what we've tried to do is update the overall position reported last time, or the assessed position, which showed us 4.3 million in inverted commas overspent. Between then and now, things have improved financially, and we're now picking up for that table the things that have changed, the things we've had time to review, and how it's affected our overall position. So 3.16 refers to, you may recall, the budget reductions were presented to you. We thought at that time we'd be 1.5 million unachieved, if you like, in terms of our planned budget reductions. Social services have looked very carefully at theirs, and they've clawed back £500,000 of that. So one of the elements of the overall overspend previously reported has now been reduced by £500,000. Other services are still going through theirs, looking at theirs, see what other options there are. But I come back to it, we've not been able to complete that task at this point in time. So therefore, we're carrying forward just over £1 million into the financial assessment table. If we move on to council tax reduction, still high on the Welsh Government's agenda in terms of providing support for the council tax reduction that we apply to those who are eligible. There's not been a second quarter claimed yet, so at the moment we're still hopeful that whatever we incur over and above our budget, or in inverted commas a normal year, will be funded by Welsh Government. It could equate to £1 million. We'll have to wait and see what it does, and obviously we'll have to wait and see whether Welsh Government do indeed continue with their 100% support that they gave for quarter one for the rest of the year. The last report in September picked up on the pay awards that had just been agreed at that point in time, and the report actually said that we need to do a bit more work on the estimated cost of the pay awards. Again, that's something we have managed to do, and two things have happened. The first thing is the Welsh Government have now confirmed they will support part of the teachers' pay award by way of grant for what they consider to be the excess over and above what they would have expected authorities to budget for. So whereas we had a £300,000 estimated overspend last time, that has now reduced to zero as a consequence of getting grant, and the 300,000 being more than it has now transpired to cost us. Same with the 600,000 for the non-teachers' pay. That was very much quite a dirty exercise that was done quickly to come up with a figure that we thought could have been a pressure, having spent time and now paid the first month and the back pay for that pay award. That 600,000 overspend will not materialise. We do have sufficient in the budget to cover the 2.75% pay award, which is a relief and good news. Paragraph 3.20 picks up on the council tax position. Paragraph 3.21 reinforces that we basically bill around about £80 million in terms of council tax, most of it for us, but some in respect of the police and the community councils. We are seeing a modest reduction in collection at this point in time, and that will impact us by the end of the year. We don't know by how much yet, and at the moment Welsh Government are considering what either flexibility or support they can provide to reduce that pressure that we may face as at the 31st of March 2021 in terms of our collectible council tax. Paragraph 3.25 picks up that although we've concentrated and included the vast majority of the substantial elements, there could be non-pandemic related pressures that may hit us between now and the end of the year. There's nothing included for that, but at the moment I'm not aware that we are facing any issues and problems with what you would call our base or core budget. We have done some budget monitoring, but again, I've been directing our capacity to the most substantial areas. So we did spend some time looking at our capital financing budget, and paragraph 3.26 picks up on that. We identified, having closed the accounts for 1920 and looked at our capital expenditure for the year we're now in, which has been helped by some quite a lot of grant support from Welsh Government for capital schemes and flexibility. we feel that we've got about £500,000 underspend in the year we're now in respect of our capital financing budget. So again, that's been brought in as a mitigation to the position that we thought we were at in September. So therefore, the table now shows a little bit higher, a problem of 2.2 million, which is nearly half of what it was, which means I'm twice as happy as I was a month ago. The 2.2 million does obviously require to be addressed, and I guess this is where there's a, if you like, partial recovery plan, which identifies the way by which at this point in time I believe we should include a short-term fix by using capital resources and some flexibility we've got to generate £500,000 from capital receipts to support the revenue budget and just under £1 million of capital reserves to support the revenue budget. I called it a short-term fix, and must admit I didn't like writing that at the time, but you know, when you think about it, we've got all our services providing so much support to so many people, social services within vulnerable, education, children, public protection, track and trace. The list goes on, doesn't it? And we need to keep everything going and address what we can do with the limited capacity that we've got. So it is a short-term fix for that 2.215 million. We did fear a far worse position a few months ago. We feared quite a bad position just over a month ago. We need to be alert for the remaining months of the financial year. We don't know what's coming. The only thing now is, I guess, that there's less months to be uncertain about. But in those 6 or 7 months that we've got left in this financial year, it is it's impossible to predict where things will go financially. But at this point in time, if you approve my suggestions, and you can see on table 3 what they are, then we've got the basis of a recovery plan, albeit using 748, i.e. the balance to be addressed from our general balances in a temporary way, whilst we look at 2 things that we didn't have a chance to look at, i.e. the departmental reserves to see what can be released, and again revisit the budget reductions that were planned for, and obviously do as much other reconnaissance on the big budget areas that we can to, as I say, eliminate the need to use our balances to ensure we have a balanced budget come the end of the year. Uncertainty is the key word, isn't it? And paragraph 3.40 picks up on, normally we're kind of worrying about 21, 22, aren't we? Over the weekend, no, it was last Friday, I think it was, the Welsh Government have responded to the UK Government's delay in announcing their budget for 21-22, and the ink is only just drying on the business planning framework, but already that needs to be changed, because now we won't get a draft budget from the Welsh Government until the 21st of December, and the settlement will not be announced for local government until the 22nd of December, and that represents 70% of our spendability. So again, we can see how fast-paced things are, how things can change so quickly, and again, that just does provide not only uncertainty for the year we're now in, but for next year as well. The Welsh Local Government Association, I think it's today, are just presenting their spending round survey results from local government to impress upon the Welsh Government how much funding is needed for the different pressures. And we'll have to wait and see how that translates into funding through the settlement for us from Welsh Government once Welsh Government get their funding from the UK Government following some form of spending review. So there you have it, Chair. A kind of balanced position, not as good as I'd like to have done, but I'm sure that everybody understands the capacity issues that we've got and how important it is to direct the troops to the key areas to try and come up with what I've called a quick fix for the year we're now in.
Thank you, Andrew. Diolch yn fawr. Thank you for the report. I'm sure members are all grateful for all the hard work that you and your staff have put in. For this, shall open this now to questions. I ddechrau cychwyn Cynghorydd Gareth Jones. Sgyn ti gwestiwn, Gareth?
Cwestiwn, ia, diolch Cadeirydd. Diolch mawr iawn, Andrew, am yr adroddiad yna. Ac dwi'n falch o ddeall, wrth gwrs, fel pob un arall, bod y sefyllfa yn edrych yn well nag oedd i bron fis neu chydig yn ôl. Gai gyplysu un peth oedd Barbara wedi cyfeirio at hynny yn yr adroddiad blaenorol, pan oedd hi'n cyfeirio at Brexit. Roedd yna bethau, da ni gyd yn cael problemau i'r rhagweld nhw ran costa, mi ddaru Barbara gyfeirio bod yna bosibilrwydd o costa ychwanegol yn dilyn Brexit ar ôl Ionawr. Y cwestiwn ydy, oeddech chi'n sôn fan yna, bod yna wrth gwrs bosibilrwydd o orwariant yn dod o wahanol gyfeiriadau, falle da ni ddim yn ei hadnabod ar hyn o bryd. Ydych chi'n teimlo bod gan Brexit y posibilrwydd yma, bod yna gosta ychwanegol yn mynd i ddod yn y misoedd cynnar yna, ac ydy'r costa yna yn o bosib yn mynd i arwain at orwariant yn y gyllideb ar gyfer eleni ac wrth gwrs gyda pa bynnag effaith fydd hynny'n ei gael ar gyllideb flwyddyn ariannol nesaf. Diolch.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Gareth. I don't know. If they did, then yes, there would be a pressure, but I don't feel that the pressure in the year we're now in would be that great should that position arise. In terms of the WLGA and their paper to the Welsh Government, that did pick up on the issues and risks in respect of Brexit for local government in Wales for a full financial year, and we'll just need to see how governments respond should additional pressures arise and whether that features in their grant support moving forward. But at the moment, I can only say, I don't know, yes, but not much.
Gareth, ti'n hapus?
Dwi yn hynod diolchgar am hynny. Dwi'n cytuno efo Andrew ac wrth gwrs yn derbyn yr eglurhad yna. Yr unig bryder sydd gennym ni wrth gwrs ydy bod Conwy'n unigryw ac efallai chi yn fregus gyn bellad am gwasanaethau a gofal cymdeithasol yn y cwestiwn ac yn dilyn y setliad a colli staff ag ati. Ac y gall hwnna daro'n waith ar gonwydd wedwn ni na sawl ardal arall. Ond fel mae Andrew'n ei ddweud, allwn ni ond cydnabod efallai'r posibilrwydd ar hyn o bryd. Diolch fawr iawn am y cyfle i ofyn y cwestiwn.
Diolch, Gareth. Councillor Peter Lewis and then Harry Saville.
Thank you, Chair. And I think this report just illustrates the variables that the department are having to deal with and how things change literally. I know from past comments that Andrew's made literally within a 24-hour period. So I think it's a credit really to the service that they've managed to produce these figures as we are seeing them today. Obviously, this time of year, things that I'm sure Andrew is well aware of is weather, and looking at the long range forecast, hopefully it might be wet but not too much snow, so hopefully that will make some contribution to going forward. But I'm happy to propose the recommendations as the listed, Chair, and to add that I'm happy to see that our strategic director is more happy this month than last. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. I've got a proposal. Councillor Harry, have you got a question, and are you ready to second Peter Lewis?
I haven't got a question. I'm just ready to second Peter.
Thank you, Harry. I've got Brian Cossey, then Anne McCaffrey and Chris Hughes, and then we'll take the vote. So Brian Cossey.
Yeah, thanks, Austin. I was just going to second the recommendations and thank Andrew for his report. I mean, we do understand the capacity issues, and I'm sure we all understand the uncertainty and the big change has been in the last 43 days. So heaven help us what the next 43 days are going to put before us. So just to second it, Mr. Chairman.
Diolch yn fawr, Brian. Councillor Anne McCaffrey, your question, please.
Thanks, Chair. And thanks, Andrew, for the report. You know, these are really tough times, are they not? And obviously, it's good to see that you are able to share with us some information in terms of how we exit where we are for this current year. My question, I'm sure you won't be surprised by, is around the potential use of reserves. Obviously, you've got in your report on 3.39 that you want to temporarily use a third of our general balances to underwrite the unfunded balance within the recovery plan. And obviously, you know, as a member of the Resilience Task and Finish group, I just wondered why you chose to articulate the challenge, the outstanding challenge in that way, in terms of seeking approval of this temporary underwriting, and indeed, you know, what the implications of it are going forward in terms of commitment, really, in terms of reserves going forward.
Yeah, that's a good question. You will recall the Financial Resilience Task and Finish group when our reserves and balances were considered. I mean, interestingly, and I guess this is one of the issues about looking at a balance sheet, the £500,000 capital receipt that is proposed to be used is materialising in the year we're now in. So that was never in our reserves to start off with, if you see what I mean. So that's not depleting anything. It's using something that was never there at the end of the last financial year, but will be in the year we're now in. And I guess, do I apologise? I don't. I apologise. In terms of the resources for capital, I guess we're doing exactly what the government's doing, really. We're dealing with the here and now, and it may be that when we come to do some of the capital schemes in future years, things will have changed and we could spread the cost of what the £900,000 represents over a number of years moving forward, as distinct from finding cuts and other ways which at the moment escape me in the year we're now in. It's not right, but it's what the world seems to be doing, and I guess I'm joining in with the rest of the world as we speak.
Anne?
I'm not sure if perhaps I've misunderstood therefore what you're proposing here, Andrew. I think I'm quite comfortable with the use of capital receipts and the capital resources, future resources. It was the £748,000 out of general balances that I was really thinking about when I asked the question.
Yeah, well, don't forget, we just using that. I did wonder whether to leave it unfinanced, to be honest, but for completeness, I just took it hopefully temporarily from the general balances. And the other strand is, you know, we'll strive to continue to look for solutions that would mean we wouldn't have to do that. Mm. So I guess that's just a mathematical balance up, as distinct from something that I think is going to happen. Like I say, we have got other things to look at. We didn't have time to do that, and it may be that when we get to the end of the financial year, or even in our next report, you'll see that disappearing, hopefully. So it's just to balance up as we speak.
And
yeah, thanks, Andrew. I completely understand that. I suppose really, I came to the same sort of thought that you had, is about why not just declare it, if you like, unresolved, really, sort of unfunded, as you've called it here. So it's a fine point, really, and I suppose I just don't really want us at this point in time to be heading down for approving the use of reserves, really. But obviously this is a temporary construct that you've put together rather than a final commitment. And obviously I understand and appreciate as well that you've got other opportunities to explore, and that time obviously isn't on your side in terms of doing that.
Thank you.
Okay, lovely, thank you. Right, finally, Chris Hughes, and then we'll go to the vote. What's your question, please, Chris?
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to thank Andrew for the excellent report that's before us, and to thank him for the perseverance in terms of the hard work that went into delivering the funding before us. I think there was an awful lot of pressure from people to move to a formula-based system, which perhaps could have been easier, but certainly, as Andrew said, wouldn't have given us the level of funding that we are seeing today. And I mean, it was interesting. I spent some time over the weekend looking at some of the reports on the LGA website, and we certainly seem to have done fared significantly better than some of the English authorities. But it's just to thank Andrew, really. I think the amount of work that's gone into this has been phenomenal, but it's proved that it was well worth it in the results that we've seen before us today. And thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Chris.
Right, then we'll go to the vote. I got a proposer from Peter Lewis, a seconder from, I've forgotten now, but I know Brian was willing to second it as well. So Harry, was it? Thank you. Sally?
Yep, okay, so we'll go to the vote. Councillor Phil Capper?
In favour.
Councillor Jeff Corrie?
In favour.
Councillor Brian Cossey?
For.
Councillor Pauline Heap-Williams?
In favour.
Councillor Andrew Hinchliffe?
For.
Councillor Chris Hughes?
Obliged.
Councillor Wyn Ellis-Jones?
Obliged.
Councillor Peter Lewis?
For.
Councillor Yvonne Lloyd? Councillor Yvonne Lloyd? No, I'm having problems with the sound again. Councillor Anne McCaffrey?
For.
Councillor Dave Rees?
For.
Councillor Austin Roberts?
Obliged.
Councillor Harry Saville?
For.
Councillor Nigel Smith?
Obliged.
Councillor Joan Vaughan?
Oh.
Councillor Andrew Wood?
For.
And Councillor Aaron Wynne?
Obliged.
Yeah, that's carried, Chair. Councillor Peter Lewis has got his hand up.
Peter?
Well, I presume you're going to the next item in terms of the exempt item, Chair.
Yes, I am.
Well, I'm happy to propose it, but one concern I have is that some councillors don't appear to be entirely on their own, and I hope that they will give assurance that they will be in complete privacy in the next item. So I'm happy to move it.
Thank you, Peter. Yes, that's a good point raised by Councillor Peter. This is an exempt item, so can I please ask all councillors to make sure that it's only them and them alone that attend this meeting. Okay, thank you. Right, so yeah, have I got a seconder? Seeing as Peter's prompted what I was going to say. Seconder, I have got Councillor Brian Cossey, who's always dependable. Thank you. So, right, so we'll be leaving now, and then we will be coming back and we will be discussing the exempt item. Okay, so see you in a mo. Thank you. Diolch yn fawr.